Hi, and welcome to the MA3 Beginner Crash Course. I'm Judah Brewster, and I'm going to be showing you how to make a show file from scratch. First thing to do, if you haven't already, is go to MAlighting.com and go over to the Downloads tab. Click on Grand MA3, Software and Release Notes. If you're on PC, download the on PC software for Windows. If you're on Mac, the on PC software for Mac. I'm on Windows, so I'll click on Windows, click Accept and Download. Let it download, install it, and go ahead and open up the app. Once you first open up the software, it'll look like this, totally blank, which is totally cool. This big blank canvas in the middle is where you can add your views, such as these predefined views over on the right side. We have a fixture view, which is also blank because we haven't patched any fixtures yet, which we will get to in a minute. We have a preset view, sequence sheet, aka your cue list, your phaser editor, 3D window, and a help menu. Over on the far left, we have this column here which has the power button, which we can shut down the console, or in this case the software. It's going to ask if we want to save, do not save, or cancel. I'll just go cancel. To the right of that is the restart button. This will restart the software. And this last button is the desk lock. Now how do you get out of this? Well, click up here in the top left, in the bottom right, in the top right, and in the bottom left, and that'll get you out of the desk lock. Right under that, you have the settings, which has your patch, DMX protocols, show file stuff, and just general settings. Under that, this is your command section. If you were on a physical board, this is what it would look like on the right side of your command wing, just in a little bit of a different layout. So you have your X keys and all of your command buttons. Under that, you have the master controls. This would be things like your Grandmaster, World Master, Highlight, Lowlight, Solo, so on, so on. Under that, you have your playbacks. This would be what you would store your sequences or songs into. Under that, this is your custom master section. Under that, this is if you had multiple monitors, then you can add multiple different screens or windows. So in this case, I only have one monitor that I'm using, so I'm just going to keep it on monitor 1. This button right here is your help menu. If you have questions about something or need help, you can click on this and go to these different tabs, and it'll help you out with that. This button right here switches your program bar to be half program and half playback, or you could just leave it to be full width program bar. And lastly, this button right here is your at filter. So you could do, at full, at 0, clear, stuff like that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to patch in some fixtures. So we're going to go over to this settings tab. We'll click patch, and it's going to load up this page. There's a couple different options. If you already had fixtures patched into your show, then on the show tab, those would show right here if you needed to patch more fixtures of the same type. Or you can go over to library, which is just a general library of different fixtures between different make and models. So you can look through here, or you can type specific fixtures. So in this case, what I'm going to do is patch in some Martin era 800s. I'm going to do the profile. I'm going to click select. For the name, I'm just going to name it Era 801. Now the reason for the 1 is for every fixture that I patch, it's going to go in numerical order from 1 to however many I have. So if I patch in a total of 10, the first name is going to be Era 801, next one is going to be Era 802, so on, so on. Now the fixture ID you could leave at 1, or what I like to do is I'll actually put it at 101, and the next type of fixture that I patch in, I'll start at 201, and the next one will be 301, so on, so on. This is basically what you're going to recall for your programmer. Now your patch, would be important if you are patching in physical fixtures. In this case, it's all digital, so I'm going to leave it at Universe 1, Channel 1. And I'm going to click Create down in the bottom right, and I have successfully created 10 Era 800s. So what I'm going to do is just exit out of my patch, click Save and Exit. Now when I go over to my Fixture tab, I can see them, and I now have all my different attributes down here. So I have dimmer, position, gobo, color, beam, focus, and control. So first thing I'm going to do is actually clear my programmer by clicking clear 3 times, and I'm going to go over to the 3D tab. Now don't freak out, the 3D tab will be blank, but if I go over here to my command section and I type in fixture 101 through 110, and click enter, then it'll highlight my fixture so they're actually under the stage. So what I need to do is rearrange the position of them by clicking the setup button in the top right of this screen. And down here in my programming section, I'm just going to raise the Z value to, let's say, 8. Now instead of clicking through each fixture and changing the X value, what I can do is click a line, so it's doing this /, and I'm just going to scroll over until I'm happy with the spacing. So we'll call that good. I'm going to exit out of setup mode, and I'm going to clear my programmer. So now that I have my 3D set up, what I can do is go over to preset, and I actually don't like this predefined preset view, so what I'm going to do is click the MA button in each of these tabs and just delete the window. Now don't worry, it doesn't actually delete it from your preset tab until you actually save it. So if I click back on it, it's going to put everything back to how it was. So I'm going to delete these once again, and I'm actually going to save this as a new view. I'm going to go over to my command section, I'm going to click store, and I'm just going to store this into view 11, and I'll label it clear. That way, no matter what view I'm on, I don't have to go through and delete every one of the views. I could just click on this. So what I'm going to do is click up here in the top left corner. I'm going to go to data pools, click on groups, and I'm just going to resize this to be one row of 10. Then right next to that, I'm going to add my 3D window. So I'm going to click on that, click on common, and I'm going to click 3D viewer, and I'll just resize that to be out there. Next, under groups, I'm going to add another window, and this one will be presets. I'm going to add a dimmer preset view. I'm going to resize that again to be one row. Under that, I'm going to add position. Then we can do gobo. This one I'm going to actually have as 2 rows. We'll do color next. This one I will also have as 2 rows. Under that, we'll do beam. I want to resize that to be the same length. This one only 1 row. And lastly, focus. And then here, I'm going to actually add a color picker by going under common and clicking color picker, and I'm just going to select that. So now I'm happy with this. I'll actually add, let's go here. We'll use this later on. We'll go over to data pools, click macros. And now I'm going to go over here to my command section, click store, click preset, and what this does is now overrides the old preset view. So now no matter what view I'm on, I can click preset and it's going to go to the one we just updated. So since we set our fixture IDs for those error 800s to be 101 through 110, I could just go down here, it auto selects fixture, so I could just type in 101, the shortcut for through, which is THRU, 110, please, or enter, and I will store that as a group. Next, let me clear my programmer, click clear 3 times. I'm going to create another group. This one will be 101 through 105. This will be my left. I'll clear my programmer once more and type in 106 through 110. And this will be my right. Now I can go through each one of these, just select it, click spacebar, and I can type in the name. So I'll type in error 800. This next one I'll type in, I'll just type in left. And this one will be right. And I will clear my programmer. Next, let's add some dimmer presets. So I will select my error 800s, and down here I will select the dimmer tab on my programmer bar. And I'll start out with typing in 0%. And now instead of going up to my command section, clicking store for every one of these, I can just type in store in my programmer, or in my command line. And click on one of these empty spaces, and we can label it. I'll type in 0%. Next we'll do 25, and then 50, 75, and so on. And there we have it. We have all of our dimmer presets done. So next what we'll do is we'll actually skip down to color. We'll do color next. So we already have our 800 selected and at 100%. So now we can start making colors. What I'm going to do first is make my first color just white. So I bring that down to white, click store, and I'll save that as my color 1. Next we could do red. Same thing, hit store, color 2, and we'll just do that for all of the colors that we want. So I'll be right back. Alright, there's my colors. I have all my saturated colors, a CTO and a CTB. Now let's go ahead and make some Gobo presets. So I'm going to select my 800s again, put them at 100%, and under my Gobo tab, I'm going to click on G1, and I'm just going to select the first one. That's going to be my first Gobo. I'll type store. I'll select my next one, store that again, and I'll just go through and do this to every one of them. Okay, there are all of my Gobo presets. So I have an open, which is just no Gobo, and a few other options. We're going to click on this little icon. We're going to take the Air 800s, put them at 100%. We're just going to throw on a Gobo that we can see. And we're going to type in store. We're just going to click an empty button. So down here. Next, we'll type in select. And click that button again. And lastly, we'll type go plus. And click it one last time. So now what this does, when we clear the programmer, it's going to actually keep everything that we had, because we have just created our first sequence. Okay, so what we're going to do now is select our Air 800s. We're going to make sure we're on the Gobo tab, and under the second option, we're going to make sure this says rotate, and we're going to rotate it until we see the word stop, which will be at 2.00. So now we're going to store this as a stop preset. Now when we rotate it a little bit to the right, it's just going to be a slight spin, a very slow spin. We can store this as slow spin. Then we can rotate it a little bit more, it'll be even faster. We'll store this as a medium spin. And we'll just do one more all the way. And this will be the fast spin. Okay, let's go ahead and clear our programmer. Now when we select our fixtures, go to stop, slow, medium, or fast. It's going to recall the speed that we stored. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to actually type in off in the command line and click sequence 2, and instead we're going to click Air 800 at 100%, and we're going to store that in its place. So we're going to click store that button, and instead of merging or creating a second key, what we're going to do is overwrite. Now when we click go plus, or type in go plus and that sequence, it's not going to have any Gobo information stored into it, which is what we want, because now we're going to make some focus presets. So we'll go over to the focus tab, and under zoom, we're going to start out with it all the way at 0 to make a narrow beam. And we're going to store this into a focus preset. Next we'll make it 25%. We'll store this as a medium. Okay, so now we're going to select our 800s, go into the narrow, and we are going to store this into that same sequence. But this time, we're going to merge. Now when we clear our programmer, it's going to stay into that tight beam. Now we can start making our position presets. So we'll start out by selecting all of our Air 800s, going over to the position tab, and we're just going to bring the tilt up just a little bit. In this case, I think it's actually backwards. Yeah, so the negatives, it goes towards you. So we'll just go to, let's say, negative 25. So now this says negative 25 over here. We're going to store that. as our first preset, and this is going to be just called straight. Now we're going to recall the straight preset, and then we'll actually go over to position again. This time we're going to make a fan preset. So what we can do is click a line once, and then start moving our pan, and this will evenly spread them out. So that we'll call that good. So 54. We're going to store this as a fan out. We'll click it again, and then we'll do the opposite this time. So click a line again, and we'll go inward. We'll call this fan in. Alright, and then we'll go into, let's go back to straight. And then we're going to select just our left, and we're going to move the pan over to about, let's do 55. And then we'll need to tilt it back up a little bit. So it matches where these spots are. Now we're going to select our right, and we're going to do the opposite. And we're going to store this as the crust position. And we'll make a couple other basic ones. We'll select all 800s again, go back to straight, and this time we're just going to make one that's straight up at the audience. Now let's look at where our tilt is. The tilt is negative 96.5, so what we're going to do is go to fan out this time, and we're going to make the tilt the same thing, so negative 98.5, and we're going to store that. We're going to store that as a fan out up. Cool. So let's go ahead and clear our programmer, and we'll test it out. So select your error 800s. You should have straight, fan out, fan in, crossed, straight up, and fan out up. Cool, so that all works. Let's go ahead and clear our programmer once more, and we'll make some beam presets. So we'll select our 800s again, we'll go over to beam, and this is basically your strobes. So SH1, that's going to be your shutter open. So just go ahead and rotate that so it says open and it's red. And we'll store that just as open. Next we can go down to the second option, which is strobe. Do kind of a slow strobe at first. Then we'll speed it up a bit. Label this one fast strobe. Then we'll go over to random. And we'll do a couple of these as well. So now we have our basic presets done. Now what I'm going to do is just make some macros to make programming a lot easier. So we're going to make our first macro by right clicking on space 1. We're going to do new macro line, right click again, and right click again once more. And we're going to type in go Q fade 1. Basically what this is going to allow us to do when we're stepping through cues that we program later on, if we're waiting on a really long fade time, let's say 30 seconds long, basically what you can do is hit this macro and it's going to temporarily make it a 1 second fade while you're on the cue, so you don't have to wait through the 30 seconds. And we're just going to label this hurry. Next we'll add another macro. In this one we're going to type in cue fade, and then in parentheses we're going to type in fade time. Basically what this is going to do when we activate the macro, it's going to pop up a window that says please enter fade time. So we're going to type in whatever fade time we want, so let's say 12 seconds. And when we click enter, what it's going to do is basically replace this what's inside the parentheses with whatever we entered. So now it says cue fade 12 seconds. So now when we look at the fade time of our sequence, instead of being 3 seconds, it's 12 seconds. We're just going to label it cue fade. Next we'll make another macro, and in this one we'll type in label cue, and that's all. So now what we can do is, if we wanted to label the cue that we're currently on, we just click this. It's going to ask us what we want to label it as. We'll just label it as test. Now when we go back into this, we can see that it is now labeled test. Next macro we'll make is going to be a store queue. So we're going to just type in store, and then in parentheses, we'll do queue number. So now when we put something in our programmer, so I'll say that at 0% and a gobo or something, and we click this, it's going to ask us what queue number. We're going to just type in like 50 or whatever, just for testing purposes. Now when we go back to the queue stack, it added a queue to 50. And we'll just label that as store queue. So we're pretty much ready to start programming. I do want to make this 3D window look a little bit better, so let's go ahead and enter in the settings by clicking this MA in the top corner. And we're just going to turn down, let's see, ambient. We're going to turn that down all the way. Point light, we could turn that down almost all the way. And then beam, we could turn that up. Spot, we could turn that up. And that should be pretty much good. So what we can do now is we will save. We'll just save this as the default. And we will store this as our new preset view. And then on 3D, what we can do, we'll just extend this to be full screen. We'll go into the top left corner again, and instead of having to mess with these again, we can just go to load, click on default, and load. And then we'll go ahead and store this into our new 3D window. Now we are ready to start programming. So let's start off by turning off the sequence by typing in off in the command line and just clicking sequence 2. And we'll go back up to our preset window that we made. And let's just make a simple look. So we'll start out with our 800s at 0%. We'll put them in, let's just put them in straight. Let's go ahead and make them at 100% so we can see what we're doing. Right now, we'll put them in straight. We'll put a gobo on them. We'll put like a fast spin, maybe a medium spin. Let's put them at cyan. And then we'll do maybe a low beam, or a low focus. And then let's put it back to 0%. We're going to type in store. We're going to store this into a new sequence right next to the one we made earlier just for testing purposes. Then we're going to click select, or we're going to type in select, click sequence 3, the one we just made. And then we're going to actually turn on shortcuts. This will allow us to use spacebar to act as our Go Plus button. So with shortcuts now on, we can click spacebar and it's going to go into that first queue, which is a 0-second fade. If we wanted to, we could do queue fade of 3 seconds. And then we'll just label this queue as start. Now one other thing I want to do is I want to make a queue list so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to go over to clear, and I'm just going to add a sequence sheet under the common tab, and I'm going to store this as a new view. And I'm just going to label it queue stack or queue list. Cool. So I want my next queue to be these at 100% and maybe in the fan out up position, and then maybe like fading to red, we'll say, and maybe even going to a wide focus, so it's kind of in your eyes. Alright, so we can go ahead and we'll do store queue. We're going to store this as Q2, and we're going to click spacebar to go into the next queue, and we're going to put a fade time on that of about 5 seconds. We're going to label this fan up to red. Okay, so now let's go ahead and clear our programmer. We'll go back to Q1, hit spacebar again, because we're currently in Q2, so hitting spacebar will circle back up to Q1. Now when we hit spacebar into Q2, it's going to take 8 seconds and it's going to fade into what we just made. Now say we want to add a strobe to it. What we can do, we'll go back to our presets. We'll select the Era 800s and we'll click maybe a fast strobe. Then we can store this into Q3, and then we'll go into Q3. And another way to change Q fades and the names is to just go into the Q stack and right click on the name or the Q fade. So we're going to label this strobe with a Q fade of about 2 seconds. Now let's go back into the previous Q. If you hold down Control and hit space, it'll go back a Q rather than going forward. So now we're in this look, and then we want to go into the strobe, hit spacebar, and it's going to fade into the strobe. Alright, now let's say we want to have the Air 800s go to an open beam, so they're not strobing anymore, and maybe going into green, and we'll do the cross position. And let's have them actually stop spinning the gobos, or maybe just a slow spin. Yeah, that's fine. So we'll do that, and maybe even change the gobo. Now something to note, you can't fade into a new gobo because it's the physical wheel on the fixture itself. So you're going to see it spinning through all the other gobos, but just for learning's sakes, I'll show you what it looks like. So we'll go ahead and store this into Q4, and then we'll click spacebar into Q4, clear a programmer, and we're going to label this back down to green. And we'll make the fade time about 6 seconds. Now if we do Control spacebar, it's going to go back up to the previous Q we had, which would be the strobe Q in red. Then we're going to hit spacebar once more to go into the Q4. And there we go. So that's the very basics of what you can do with MA3. There's so many options of what you can do, so many fixtures, many different ways to program. A lot of people like to do, separate views for different attributes, so they would have color on one view, maybe position on another, focus on another, so on and so on. For the sake of this video, I just put everything in one view to keep it easy for learning. But I'll go ahead and leave the show file and the link in the description with instructions on how to load it into your software. And if you found this video helpful, consider leaving a like and subscribing, maybe ringing that bell. And I'll try to post more videos on MA3 as well, kind of diving deeper into what you can do with it. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye.